Okay, so the pericardium, if you think about that word, pericardium, that means around the heart. And so our organs do not just sit kind of free floating in our body cavities, but they are surrounded by membranes, and they're actually also anchored. And so when we look at the pericardium, it is actually a double-walled sac that surrounds the heart. Now, when we look at this sac, let's look at the innermost layers here. So we have a layer that is attached to the organ. It's actually attached to the heart surface. And when we talk about these serous membranes, the layer that is actually attached to the surface of the organ is actually called the visceral. So visceral actually means like an organ, like it's your viscera, right? So the visceral is that layer of the pericardium. So we have the visceral pericardium. This also is called the epicardium. So this is connective tissue on the outside of the heart. We also have another layer, which is called the parietal, and that is another word which you'll see in other organ systems, but it is called the parietal pericardium, and it is the outer layer. And so in between these, you have what is referred to as the pericardial space or cavity. So these contain the pericardial cavity. So they're the actual layers that in between, so I'll put maybe contain between them the pericardial cavity. That might be better. Okay, so we have the serous fluid of the pericardial cavity, and this allows for friction-free movement of the heart. Friction, that says friction-free movement. Now, sometimes that can actually not work properly. So for example, you could have pericarditis, which is inflammation of the pericardium, and that could actually lead to not enough fluid in that pericardial space, and then the heart actually rubs. And so that is a problem, one problem, but another problem would be that you would just simply have too much fluid, and that actually causes another problem where there's excessive pressure on the heart. So if we look at this pericarditis, I'll write it over here. This is anytime you see that itis, like arthritis, right? It's inflammation of that part of the body. And then we have what is referred to pericardial frictional rub. And this can be painful, and you can hear it. So for example, a doctor using a stethoscope or a nurse using a stethoscope would be able to hear that sound. We also have the opposite problem, which is called cardiac tamponade. Maybe I spell this right. Oh, there's an O there. Tamponade, right? And so this is where you actually have excess fluid. So this would be not enough fluid. And then this would be excessive fluid. And those can be both problematic. The one with the excessive fluid means that your heart gets compressed. And so it's very hard for it to beat because it's got pressure. It's got that pericardial fluid pressure on it. And so oftentimes what they'll do with that one is that they will just remove some of that pericardial fluid with a syringe in order to decrease the pressure being exerted on the heart. For the pericardial frictional rub, this actually, they say it sounds like a creaking sound when they listen to the heart. because the heart is rubbing against the serous membranes.